Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 28th Lebanon City Council meeting. Our first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we'll move on to our roll call members. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mike Kincaid.
Present.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Morris Jones.
Here.
Dick Robertson.
Here.
John Copeland.
Here.
Brent Wheat.
Present.
Sierra Messenger.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from our previous meetings. We have minutes from January 24th as well as February 14th. Are there any proposed changes to those minutes?
Make a motion we approve those minutes from January 24th and February 14th.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second from Brent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. First up, we have the swearing in of will be our new battalion chief, Matt Shepard, tonight. So Chief Batts, you want to come forward?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to introduce our newly promoted battalion chief, Matt Shepard, and his wife will be joining him for the badge pinning and swearing in.
I, Matt Shepard, solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Indiana and all laws and ordinances of the City of Lebanon. And I will faithfully discharge my duties as a battalion chief of the Lebanon Fire Department to the best of my ability. So help me God. Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you to my family and a lot of my peers that came tonight to support me. I wouldn't be where I am today without them. And I look forward to representing not only the City of Lebanon Fire Department, but the whole community in a positive manner and being a positive role model to our youth. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll stay in adjournment just for a few moments if people want to leave. You can always stay. City council meetings are always fun, exciting. I always get a laugh at that one.
It wasn't long enough, was it? It seems like you should stay longer.
Mayor, you're just not selling it enough.
I know, I guess not. Talking speed limits, text minutes unified development ordinance.
I think that's
Nothing?
bad.
Okay. All right, we will return from recess. We'll move on to old business. I don't have anything on my agenda. Is there anything from council?
I don't have any.
Okay. New business then. First item up, we'll have Dave Newell with the concerning a request for a speed limit zone for around the Perry School. This is really just Dave is going to kind of talk about some of the data we have on that. There's no action tonight on this. This is really just more of an update after we did some analysis of the situation. So I'll turn it over to Dave to talk about that.
Yeah, they just called the office, some school people out there, and with I'm sure a lot of it's with the construction and stuff, there's just a lot more traffic out on 400 and 300, and with, they pick up kids. They don't walk, obviously, like they do here in town, but they still have to pick up their kids that don't ride the bus and stuff, and really concerned with the traffic. So we went ahead and did a traffic count. Believe it or not, it's right there at a four-way stop, so we thought, well, might be a little exaggerated, but no, we were getting like 60 to 70 mile an hour speed limits. So all they're going to do is just obviously not the whole road. We were just going to take right there by Perryworth and just drop it down to 20 mile an hour school zone like the rest of ours. That way, if there is people out there, being crazy, at least Chad and them could enforce it, So that's just what we did. We just did a traffic study and put the counters out and all that stuff. And there is quite a bit of traffic that we thought out there.
Any questions for Dave on that?
No, sir.
And again, we can get you the full report. You've got that. We can share that with you guys before our next meeting if you want.
The county
But
did say that if we did our side, since the other side is theirs, they'd go ahead and drop theirs down right there too if we got ours done.
Okay. Okay. So we'll bring that up at our next meeting or so with an actual ordinance to do that. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. So thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Ordinance 2022-05. Council to consider text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, and this has been Bontrager.
Good evening, council. Just to give you a little bit of background of how we came to the conclusions we have for you tonight. As my staff can attest, we get inquiries on a regular basis to place new automobile filling stations or gas stations within the city of Lebanon. And we obviously do have a new one in Casey's going into Lebanon Gateway Marketplace. That would actually be our 16th gas station in the city of Lebanon. And I'll show you a map here in a second where all those are located. But really, there's a feeling amongst the staff and amongst obviously others in the city that we are well served by gas stations at the current moment for the current population and frankly on our current primary corridors, and that we really need to find a way to limit for the foreseeable future development of new gas stations, just to kind of turn the spigot off for a little while and figure out exactly how we want to address these in the future. As I mentioned earlier in the Board of Works meeting, we're actually hoping to kick off our UDO update in April, and this will be one of the things that we will focus on is really how to best address these uses. But in the meantime, just again, with the number of inquiries that we're getting right now on gas stations, we're hearing that there are others that are in the works, property owners talking to each other. We really want to kind of turn the spigot off, and we think the best way to do that is through the Thoroughfare Overlay District, which actually would be applicable to State Road 39, State Road 32, Indianapolis Avenue, and Lafayette Avenue, our primary corridors of the community, and obviously 3 of those 4 are where we have all of our gas stations now. And what we want to do then is we have a list of uses that are prohibited in the overlay district, and we would like to add automobile filling stations to that list of prohibited uses in the overlay district. You can see here this, of course there's a little bit of a glare, but State Road 32, you see there are 2 on the west side of 32. There are 2 on there, 1 existing and 1 proposed directly east. And as you come into town, there are 2 additional before you get to downtown. State Road 39 has 1 Flying J on the south side, and then you've got a gas station to the north, 1 in downtown. Indianapolis Avenue has 2 gas stations, and as you go north on Lebanon Street, State Road 39, you see there's an additional 5 of them as you go north on Lebanon Street. So again, we think both by sheer number we have an adequate number of gas stations, but also location. We see all parts of the existing developed community as being served well by gas stations, and primarily on those corridors we would be addressed by adding those prohibited uses within the overlay district. Now, we do feel like as the community grows and the boundaries extend further, that there may be certain locations where we can see there being need for additional gas stations. And I think that's what we're going to try to figure out how to address when we do the UDO update, whether there's targeted areas or targeted corridors where we could see that. Like I can see out west on State Road 32 as we start to develop west, that there might be a need for an additional gas station, or south on State Road 39 as the area by the field house develops, and further south, maybe there's a need for additional one there. And certainly as Waterford develops, and if there's a new interchange down there to the south of the community, I could again see with the number of people that are going to be living in that area that there might be some additional need for some of these services. But that's in the future. And what we want to do right now is, like I said, just do a real simple text amendment to the Thoroughfare Overlay District. It is in section H of prohibited uses, just added number 22 for automobile filling station. That would prohibit that as a use in our Thoroughfare Overlay District on those corridors that I mentioned. And really just kind of turn the spigot off for now so we can really figure out over the course of the next probably about 9 to 10 months or so as we update the UDO how best to address them in the future. We certainly don't want to completely eliminate land use from the city of Lebanon, but that'll really give us a chance to really put the proper standards in place as we move forward in the community. I do know, again, as I mentioned, we're getting inquiries on almost a weekly basis with this. Unless there is some reason that we would want to deliberate this further, I would ask that you perhaps consider suspending your rules and go from first to second reading tonight and just go ahead and get it adopted now so we can get that in place. And really, again, just kind of turn that spigot off now, and so we have the time to figure out how to address it.
Ben, I do have a question for you. Based on the way this is worded, do you feel like if someone wanted to come in and do a electric vehicle charging station, do you think that would be a prohibited use, or do you think that would be permitted?
It would not be. So if you look, and actually that's another thing that we need to add in our updated UDO is to address some of the emerging technologies. But right now, our definition of automobile fueling station specifically says petroleum-based products. So that would really look at just a gasoline station. So that would technically not eliminate the ability to do electric charging stations. But we certainly want to add that as a defined use in our UDO update. But so yeah, those would not be eliminated with this change.
I just think it's something for the council to consider too, is, what's the lifespan on a new gas station being built these days, right? I mean, most major car manufacturers are trying to be all electrical vehicles by 2035, I believe is the date. That's within a 30-year mortgage range essentially, right? So how much longer are we going to need gas stations like this in town? And so we're going to have to, as we know, as we've been dealing with our brownfields program, anytime you have a gas station, usually there's some type of remediation, right? There's tanks in the ground, there's things like that we have to address. So, again, something to think about as we were considering this, and open for that. With the floor to discussion from council on that, or?
Well, aside from what the mayor just said, what's the downside? I agree, we've got plenty of gas stations, but what's the downside of having too many?
I think part of it is diluting the market to the point where, if you've got some gas stations that are, I don't know if the correct term is substandard, but I think you're going to get to the point where you've got some gas stations that are going to start to struggle and potentially close. Now, certainly as a growing community, that may not be an issue, but certainly, with 16 gas stations, we've essentially got one gas station per 1,000 people that live here. Certainly, we have a lot of added customers because we're on I-65. I think the concern is if you start to dilute the market too much, some of those marginal gas stations are going to start to struggle. And last thing we need is closed gas stations, because then we get to the environmental issues that the mayor mentioned, that we're still dealing with some 60-year-old gas stations now with tanks that haven't been properly disposed of.
Isn't the underground technology better now, though, so hopefully that wouldn't be an issue, or?
Well, it is now, but if those tanks aren't properly disposed of now, at 40 years, it's still going to be an issue.
Okay.
But I don't think the goal here is to say we don't need any new gas stations. I think really let's stop this now so we can take the time to properly address this, so as we grow in the future and we grow to different parts and regions of the community, then we can address those properly at that time. But if you look at again, like I showed on the map, if you look at our primary developed corridors, they are well served by gas stations. So by eliminating the third overlay district, that addresses those corridors, and we can really figure out how to best create targeted areas in the future.
Okay. And why the hurry? Why do we need to suspend our rules?
If you were in my office and heard the number of inquiries about gas stations, we would want to hurry. I've heard just in the last probably month about 3 other potential gas stations looking at parts of the community. So once they've filed something, they have standing, and I really can't, again, Mr. Shine could address this as well, but once they've filed, they have standing, and even if we change rules later, they've got standing, and so they could make their way through the process. So by putting this in place now, we can just let people know, the answer is no, it's not permitted. So then we can have the time then to address it over the next 9 or 10 months.
Okay.
Hey, Ben, you said there's a new one scheduled for the west side?
Yeah, so Casey's is going to be putting a second station. This is not moving their existing station, but a second station in the Lebanon and Gateway Marketplace development on the south side of State Road 32, right there off of the interchange.
Is there also a new one going to be at the corner of Indianapolis Avenue and State Road 32?
They had talked about one. When we looked and started applying the standards to it, actually we have a restriction right now in place, which actually doesn't affect many of our gas stations. It says you can only have one within a block. And if you look out there, if you use Spencer Avenue and Grant Street as the block, the existing Casey's gas station is within that same block. So it's actually, while they've been discussing the possibility of one there, when you actually apply the standards as they're written, they wouldn't be able to put one there. So we've been working with them. I think they're looking at some alternatives there. It may just be a convenience store or some other use there. But right now, that's not permitted. But that block standard says that if I were at a standard intersection, all 4 corners could be a gas station, because those are all technically different blocks by our definition. So that doesn't really restrict them as much as I think the definition was.
So they could, and I'm not saying this is happening, but a gas station could go in where the Milky Way is because it's on the other side of.
Right across the street, it's a different block.
Yeah, so.
Is
Thank
the
you.
one across from the bowling alley that was on fire. Is it being redone and rebuilt and going to come back into operation?
They've got a repair permit in our office right now. They're doing some work out there that they don't have permitted, so we're trying to work through that with them to make sure they get the proper permits in place. But yeah, the intention there is to repair and remodel that store and kind of bring it up to current standards.
Another quick question. I would say that almost all the gas stations that we have in the Lebanon area are also convenience stores. Are we going to see an influx now if we're going to restrict the gas? Now we're going to just have an influx in convenience stores coming in? Because in some of the communities outside the Lebanon area, I see a lot of those locations. And they just kind of put them in neighborhoods and along the streets and stuff like that, and becomes very congested and sometimes problematic with traffic and things like that.
I would say we might see some, but most of those locations, the traffic that's generated by people coming and going so frequently filling up with gas generates income and revenue for the actual convenience part of it. So I don't think we'll see a flood of convenience stores just because they really benefit from having the fueling station there too. But I do know if there's a possibility, there's some folks looking at that right now to maybe do a convenience store with some other uses associated with it in the same building. But I don't think it's going to be an influx of a lot of them, just because the fueling station brings people in and out very frequently, and the revenue's on the convenience side, but that generates people. So I just don't think we'll
I see the convenience stores. I mean, from my old position, when it comes to tobacco and alcohol, it's an in-and-out store. It's in and out as quickly as possible. So it does cause congestion. It does cause a lot of traffic. That's the reason I was asking if that is, if we're going to see an influx of those, since we're going to do away with the gas pumps.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see.
And are we going to have restrictions if they start coming in that big?
I don't think we'll see a significant influx, just because I think, again, that they really benefit from having the fueling pumps there as well, because that brings them just that many more people that will choose to go stop in, that some people may not stop if they don't need gas. So I think the traffic counts are much, much lower for convenience stores by themselves. So I think they benefit quite so much from the marriage of the fueling plus the convenience store that I just don't think we'll see a ton of them. But again, certainly those are only permitted in certain areas as well. So in commercially zoned areas, so it's not like we're going to see them in neighborhoods because the zoning wouldn't permit it. But that's certainly, if we start looking at it, we could certainly address it as well in the future. But again, I think the other standards we have in place are going to make it difficult for those to go in primarily residential areas because of the zoning itself.
You brought up an interesting phrase, and he kind of touched on it a little bit too. So in these areas, you use the phrase oversaturation. So what types of things should we be on the lookout and classify those as oversaturation? So those are, I'm just saying down the road, is that language we need to include and try to understand? Because we're talking about our gateway corridors that have to look and be exactly right. So that's an interesting point you brought up.
Yeah, I think that's something, we'll have to do. There's probably some other market research we would probably have to hire somebody to do to really figure out, what's the proper ratio on these, and then figure out the best way to legislate those in a legal manner without, because I had a gentleman that he is considering a gas station. So why aren't you restricting the amount of hotels that are being built, because the existing ones are struggling, but you're allowing new ones to be built? So the same question we said about every other use. I mean, are we building too many hotels, or are we building too many X, Y, or Z?
But that was my point, because you use that word oversaturation of that's a word that can kind of needs to be tempered, or at least explained in our legal things, or we could be,
Well, and I totally agree. And I think, too, something to consider, I think the gas stations are a little bit of a unique scenario because we do have a changing technology as well, right? I mean, and the repurposement or redevelopment of sites like that becomes more challenging, right? And that's something that we have to think about, what is this parcel going to be in 50 years from now, right? And how do we make sure that's appropriate? So I think it's something that's slightly different than maybe per se a hotel, like I was talking about, because those can be repurposed into other uses as well in the future. So, and also when you couple that with the environmental challenges that's sometimes associated with it, I think it's a little bit of a unique scenario with this. And
I realize the gas station presents the environmental things, but I mean, that begins to open up the whole thought process that as we come in on these corridors, they come through neighborhoods, and those are unique neighborhoods, which we are pledged as a city to consider. So again, just because you can put something all along it doesn't mean it's for the benefit of the city. And I think sometimes the benefit of the city is in the equation as far as the benefit of the free market at that point. So that's language I think we should be looking at, and maybe included in these gateway corridors coming in. What is it that we need to be seeing there? What's attractive? What makes an impression? And also what serves the community along the way, so.
And we'll certainly have to figure out a way to turn what is somewhat of a subjective comment into something that's objective that we can legislate properly, but there's certainly ways we can do that.
Yeah, I understand.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion from council?
No, sir.
Do I have unanimous consent to suspend the rules from council to move ordinance 2022-05 to second reading?
Sure.
I'm not convinced of that.
I'm okay with it.
I mean, this is telling people that are going to be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're just cutting them off. And I'm okay with that if that's what we choose to do, but to suspend the rules in one meeting and get it done that fast, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
It's the will of the council.
I'm good with it.
Well, Brent's not.
Okay, we
so-
got
so
one up and one down.
It has to be unanimous.
It does have to be unanimous. Yeah, it has to be unanimous.
I don't know.
So, not comfortable? Okay. Is there any public comment at this time concerning ordinance 22-05? Okay. Rob, can you read the ordinance, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. Ordinance 2022-05, again, is amending the text of the Unified Development Ordinance of the City of Lebanon. Pursuant to Indiana Code, the City of Lebanon Plan Commission conducted its required public hearing and determined its favorable recommendation on February 22nd, 2022 by a 5-0 vote, and then certified its recommendation to this body on February 23rd, 2022. Pursuant to Indiana Code, this council has considered the proposed text change amendment along with the recommendation of the City of Lebanon Plan Commission, and now adopts the amendment and approves this ordinance amending the text of the Unified Development Ordinance as described herein, and it amends again the text of the Unified Development Ordinance, specifically Section 6.1.H, prohibited uses, the thoroughfare overlay district that's described in Exhibit A. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its passage of this council.
Okay. Any further discussion, comments from council?
No, sir.
Okay. Ordinance 2022-05 has been read on first reading. We'll take that up at our next meeting, which will be Monday, March 14th at 7:15 p.m. Okay, that concludes what I have for new business. Is there anything from council?
No, sir.
Any announcements or discussion? Any general public comment? Okay, would entertain a motion concerning the claims.
Make a motion, we pay the claims.
We have a motion to pay the claims. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second from John. All those here say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Claims are approved. And would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Brent. All those here say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Again, our next meeting will be Monday, March 14th at 7:15 p.m. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.
I will not be here.